It's a big day for Fed speakers in this area. Many key names are taking part in a forum in New York City. Vice Chair Richard Clarida is on stage as we speak. Ylan Moy is in that room as we speak. She joins us with the highlights thus far. Ylan.
Hi, Scott. Well, Clarida is laying out the scope of the Fed's very broad, comprehensive review of its monetary policy framework. He said that the Fed will make the results of that review public. It will conclude in the first half of 2020, and it's going to focus on three main questions. The first is whether the Fed should be making up for all of the years that its inflation target missed that 2% goal. Clarida is saying that the Fed will be considering things like an average inflation target over a number of years, in addition to perhaps price level targeting as well. But he does point out that these come with two big problems as well. The first being time consistency. If the Fed decides to overshoot inflation in the future, would those years actually call for the Fed to allow inflation to overshoot? So there's a problem there. The second problem he points out is that there is a question of whether the Fed could credibly make that commitment to the public. Can they explain this to the American people, and would they believe that the Fed would be able to achieve that goal? So that's the first big question. The second big question that this review will encompass is whether the Fed should expand its toolkit. One of the things that Clarida will specifically point out is the question of whether the Fed should pre-announce floor prices for longer-term treasuries. He says that could create a temporary ceiling on treasury yields that could be helpful when the Fed is at the zero lower bound. So that's one thing that will be under consideration. Finally, the Fed will assess whether it needs to revisit its communication strategy. It wants to decide if there are better ways to coordinate policy tools, as well as understand the interplay between monetary policy and financial stability and the role that communication plays in that. Now, Clarida will emphasize that this does not mean that the Fed is dissatisfied with its current policy framework, but I do think that it is an acknowledgement that it might need more tools in the future, and that while the economy is strong, this is a chance for the Fed to step back, take a look at the big picture, and decide what it needs in its toolbox when the next crisis strikes, Scott.